feel like people just don't get what you're trying to say? Welcome to the Own Your BS show, a place where we help you to strengthen connections, conquer challenges, and claim your messages. I'm Cindy Tian, and in today's conversation, we'll be diving into this topic about why even the smartest people struggle with communication and exactly what we can do to conquer that. So I'm very excited today because I have a very special co-host and a guest and a very dear friend, and her name is Marianna Pascal. And the reason why I'm so excited to have her is because, she's highly respected in this space and this industry of speakers. And she's one of the 10th most watched female TEDx speakers in history with an astounding 26 million viewers worldwide. She's a former professional actor turned communication expert where she helps organizations and leaders get their message across effectively. She has also won many awards globally, including those in public speaking and storytelling. So Marianna, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm very, very happy to be with you always.
I'm so glad we're finally getting to see each other again after such a long time. Do you remember how we first met? And I know this was years ago.
Oh my God, how we first met. Okay, what I remember about you is I knew your name long before I met you. I remember there was some kind of event. A lot of speakers were speaking for, I can't remember what it was called, but I remember asking a lot of our colleagues, like, who was the standout speaker? And I remember a few of them said Cindy Tian, and I'm thinking, who is this Cindy Tian? Who is she? Anyway, then you called me for coaching.
Yes.
And I coached you.
I was supposed to speak at a convention, and I was given sort of like a TEDx style segment to do. It was 12 minutes.
Oh, I remember it.
Yeah.
I remember it. And you know what stands out in my mind about that talk? Do you remember you talked about you worked at the airlines and you had these beehive hairstyles, right, as a flight attendant. And you told me that the flight attendants with the highest beehive got sort of the most respect.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So today, every time I'm in the
I can't believe you remember that.
I remember, it's stuck in my head, and I've told a lot of other people. And when I'm walking through the airport and I see a flight attendant with a really high beehive, I feel I should sort of bow and just sort of acknowledge them as I walk by.
Pay a little bit more respect, huh? I remember, the relationship that we had. It was during COVID. So I approached you for coaching because one of my mentors, shout out to Avi, introduced me to you, and you came highly, highly recommended as a speaker coach. And at that time, 12 minutes is the toughest thing I've ever done. It's one thing to do a 45 minutes keynote, a 90 minutes lunch talk, and a one full day training, but 12 minutes, I had no idea, no content, nothing. And I remember us getting onto calls after calls, and we literally create something beautiful out of nothing. And I'm like, I couldn't have done that by myself. I'm like just blank. And I think our relationship was bonded through a lot of laughter, tears, and maybe even some beers. Online.
Oh, yeah. Well, we hit it off right away. And I loved your style of speaking. We just sort of worked really, really well together. I remember it. And then when we first met each other face to face, it's that wonderful COVID hug of someone that you've already created this great relationship with, but if you've never seen them before.
Yes, absolutely. I remember it was such a beautiful moment. I think I went to pick you up from Avi's home, if I remember. That was the first time I'm like meeting you in person. I'm like, oh my God, I'm finally meeting this person who is so gifted, so talented, so genuine, and somebody who's just truly hilariously funny. People that I like.
Well, likewise, my friend. I told you what I heard about you long before I met you was this name. Look out for Cindy Tian. So.
It's such a beautiful to think back about this journey, and I'm so happy to have you with me. So we are going to be talking about communication today because you are the expert. So just wanted to sort of ask you about communication because a lot of people are having issues with it, even because leaders are talking about it as well. And if I think about my own communication challenges, I remember this was probably when I was about 18 years old and I did my very first sales job. I was a sales executive working for a company that required me to sell advertisement space for a printed directory. And the people that I needed to pitch to and sell to were business owners in the industrial area. So it was scary. And I remember I was like a teenager, right? I will go to those industrial areas, go and knock on doors, and there would literally be these like uncles wearing their translucent white singlets, squatting on the floor, sawing a piece of wood or wielding some metals. And I had to go to them and squat with them on the floor, and I would have to go, "Uncle, you want to buy advertisement or not?" So it was crazy scary for me at that age. And when I first started, I had a senior that went with me. And every time I did my sales pitch, what I realized that he did was that he would repeat the exact same thing that I said, but in his own ways. Like he was rephrasing what I said all the time. And after a few sessions of this, I was a little bit frustrated, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, is there a reason why you are repeating what I said? Was I not clear?" And I remember him saying something like, "Cindy, you're talking too fast. You're not giving them the whole picture, so they don't understand what you're saying." And that was the first time I realized that I had a communication challenge. And what my challenge was is, even though I thought the message was clear in my head, it actually wasn't clear to the person outside. Yeah, so what has been your own communication challenges, Marianna, since you're the expert in this area?
Oh, well, many. I mean, thank you for sharing yours. And you know what? The fact that you got down with those guys on your hands and knees where they were says to me already that you have great communication skills, because you knew to connect with them where they are. You know, you made the connection first. So maybe your mentor wasn't altogether right. Yeah, for me, I think my passion for communication has come from my own challenges. And it started when I was a child. I had a very weird form of dyslexia. And you've probably seen I write in a very weird way. That's for another show. But because I had this dyslexia, I could not really digest complexity when people spoke or wrote. So I remember often as a child clarifying with teachers, with everybody, and I got really good at clarifying. So what you're saying is you're saying that, you know, this happened and this was the cause of that and this was the impact. Am I correct? I got really good at simplifying complexity, and that's where my interest began. And actually today, this is what the world needs. We're all about simplifying the complexity of the world we're in. So that was my biggest communication challenge. Yeah. And then later, 2017, I lost 50% of my hearing. So for a communication expert, to have 50% hearing was really tough.
50%?
50%.
So does it mean it's one ear or
1 ear?
25?
I hear nothing here. Nothing is coming in this ear.
Okay.
So
do you need me to yell louder or
no? Because you're close. It's doing a little loop here. But,
okay.
But I mean, losing 50% of your hearing loss was devastating. Can I tell you the story of when I realized it might have been a gift? I remember, imagine this. So I'm 6 months in, I'm 50% less hearing. I'm in the communication business. I can't hear anything anybody's saying. And I go to dinner with a friend of mine, and Bin Yuen, I think you know him. We go to this very quiet restaurant because I have to sit at the right table, quiet restaurant. We sit there, and he's going to tell me all about this problem he's having with his girlfriend. He starts pouring his heart out, and instantly the restaurant fills with people. And I can't hear a thing he's saying. And I have a choice. I either have to tell him to stop sharing, because I can't hear, or else I just lean in and do my best. I leaned in, he kept talking. I just listened with my eyes. I listened to his body. I listened to whatever words I could grasp. And I was so there for him. And I got him without actually hearing all the minutiae of what he was saying. And at the end, he said to me, "Thank you so much for being such a great listener." And I thought, well, there you go. There's one huge key to communication, you know. It's so much more than just the words. You know, it was just being fully present with him. So the hearing loss has actually been a great gift to me. It's made me a better listener.
Yeah, I think it has kind of turned out to be something good for you. It's almost like when a part of us break down and then the other parts actually start to come alive
Yeah,
because you need it a lot
absolutely.
more.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
God
beautiful story.
compensates.
And I guess that's what makes you an even better communication expert because you've got so many elements to talk about, so many layers to sort of unpack from this. Communication is not just about the physical listening, but there's so many other elements that come together with
Oh,
this.
it's a fascinating topic. And if you think about it, Cindy, like what was the very first skill you ever learned in your life? It was communication, right? The first thing you did when you popped out of your mother was scream. We've had this skill since the day we were born, and yet we still see terribly bad emails written, people presenting, shoving information down the throats of their leaders and not getting their message across, writing fancy, complicated emails, not getting their message across, having conversations, not hearing each other, repeating over and over again and not getting the message across. How can it possibly be something we've been doing so well? We do unconsciously so badly.
You know, you got me thinking about a quote that I heard about a year ago, and I attended a marriage enrichment workshop. And one of the quotes shared was, very often we think that we have communicated, but we actually have not communicated. Yeah, so that's something that came to my mind. And I've once heard and read that even Einstein, one of the smartest people in the world, had to get his wife to translate his ideas in such a way that other people can understand it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So
That's
this is, it's like a phenomenon, right? So there are a lot of smart people out there, leaders out there, brilliant minds, amazing ideas, but somehow their message gets lost in translation. Why do you think that happens? And why do these super smart people often struggle to get their point across?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. And interestingly, Cindy, often the higher level people have more challenge getting their message across, right? And that's for many reasons. One is that people don't tell them, I don't understand. So they're less likely to realize. Another thing is that they have more knowledge. So like Einstein, the more information you have, the harder it is to see things from people's viewpoint that don't have that information. I think there's two reasons that I see right now why communication is so challenging and sometimes fails, even with the smartest people. And the first thing, and tell me if you can relate to this, is simply emotion. Emotions drastically get in the way of the way we speak and the way we hear. Tell me. As I say that, do you have any experience with that?
That's a very, very huge one. I mean, for me, as somebody who specializes quite a bit in emotional intelligence and resilience, I remember years ago when I first started becoming a trainer and a speaker, one of the things that would really get to me is if I were to be conducting an engagement, a public speaking engagement, and if there was one swanky fella in a designer suit with a stoic face and a crossed arms, decided that, hey, I'm going to ask a question. And if that is a question that I don't have answers to, I remember that I'll get so anxious. I'll start to speak very quickly. I'll start to say a lot of things, and people would not understand what I'm saying. And when I first started learning about emotional intelligence, I later learned that this is called the emotional hijack. Yeah, so what it happens is it kind of affects our emotional brain, and our logical brain starts to get all wound out and we don't make sense of what we're saying. And I feel that that's actually a big thing that people are not even aware that their emotions are being hijacked.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that specific example of fear of not knowing or making a mistake or not having the answer, that is one of the most common examples of the emotion that gets in the way. And you know where I see this all the time, Cindy, is when people's leaders ask them questions, say in a meeting or in a presentation, and people have this feeling that they've got to have all the information or the perfect information. And because that panic sets in that they don't, they undermine what they do have. And as a result, they end up sort of either, like you said, talking around in circles and over-talking, or they say, I don't have the answer, I'll get back to you, which we learned in school is a good thing to say. But actually, often we have partial information. We may not have objective information, but we have perspective from our experience. for that person asking us our view, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be complete. It can be partial information for now. It can be what we do know at this point, or what I see from where I sit. So people undermine what they know, feeling that it's got to be perfect.
That's fascinating. So very often we think that we have to give a perfect answer or the full answer. When we undermine ourselves, we might know 50% of it, but because we are afraid of sharing that 50%, thinking that it's too little, we'll rather not say.
Yeah, you know what it's like to me as a perfect example? And this is how ridiculous it is. It's almost like, imagine this. Imagine if you decided to cook and you open your refrigerator and the only thing in your refrigerator is eggs and milk. Now, you would never in a million years say, oh my God, I have no chicken. Oh my God, I've got no cheese. I don't have any beef. I've got no spinach. You wouldn't think like that. You would think, okay, I've got eggs and milk. What can I make? Right? So in every other area of life, we think, what can I do with what I have? But when it comes to communication, to answering questions like that, we always see as what we're lacking rather than what we have. So yeah, that fear is one emotion. Another big emotion that gets in the way of communication is fear of blame. Fear of blame. And I'll give you, can I share with you
Of course,
a very interesting
please do.
experiment? Okay. You tell me if you can guess. I'll share with you the experiment. You tell me if you can guess. I've often in programs that I've done, I've asked people how they would structure an answer if somebody asked them, how are you going to solve this problem? Right? Let's say we're talking about a situation, a real life situation that happened in your organization. And I say, well, what if the leader says, how are you going to solve it? How do you construct that answer? What do you think most people start their answer with? And I'll give you two choices. See if you can guess.
Okay, give it to me.
Okay. One of them is, well, let me share with you how we can solve it. Number two is, well, let me start with why it happened. What do you think most people start their answer with?
Why it happened.
That's right.
We want to do the root cause analysis, don't we?
And the reason for that is we feel you are seeing there's a problem. The first thing I need you to know is that it didn't happen because I did something wrong. You know, it's a way of saying, well, let's set the record straight. I want you to know, first of all, that the reason we're having this problem was not an error of mine or was not a mistake of mine. So people tend, no matter what the person is asking, even if the leader is saying, how are we going to solve it? People's natural instinct is to say, the first thing that I want to do subconsciously is let you know I didn't make a mistake. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now to me, that's really interesting. So that feeling of fear of being blamed hugely gets in the way of communication.
A big part is really very much related to emotions and defensiveness.
Let me ask you something. Do you have any example in your life where you have let your own emotions get in the way of the way you heard somebody or the way you
Well, all the
spoke to somebody?
time. When I fight with my husband, I just remember 2 days ago, I was stressed up about everything. And I went home telling him that, hey, you did this wrong and you did that wrong. And then he started questioning me, what is this all about? And when I reflected for a while, I realized it's because I was just stressed with 10 other things. And I was communicating with him in a way that it was all because I was just so disturbed about the entire day that I was just being a total bitch to him. And he got the brunt of all my horrible emotions. So I remember that very clearly. And I think very often when we are out in public and in the workspace, right, we talked about defensiveness, we talked about the emotional hijack. I realized that very often we are actually communicating to protect ourselves rather than to connect with the other person if we're not careful.
You know what? You said that really beautifully, Cindy, and that's very much what it is. Our intention, as soon as there is any kind of breach of our dignity, our self-respect, our name, our value, our aim in the conversation is never to solve the problem or collaborate or connect. It's to restore our dignity. that will come first. It's very primal. It's very primal.
very
It's a
primal.
question back to your husband, Cindy. You're not off the hook yet. Did you make amends?
Well, so my husband and I, we are both reactive. We are both impulsive. So I think one of our regular patterns is that we'll fight and then the next day we'll kiss and make up. But very often, we are a lot more reflective these days. When we first got married, we literally were like, shoving each other, throwing things, vulgarities across the home. Not cool at all. But I think over the years we've reflected, we've also done work on ourselves. I think we are very, very aware about our own tendencies,
Right.
what triggers our emotions, and the meaning we form behind certain things. So for example, my husband could be driving and I'll just say something like, "Hey darling, is it okay if you turn left here?" And then he'll suddenly tell me, "Can you please stop telling me what to do?"
Bruh.
And to me, I'm just giving you this direction so that we don't get lost and get late. But to him, he's seeing it as, "Why are you talking down to me?" So very often, I think communication also gets thwarted when we start to form meanings about what people are trying to say to us.
Yeah, yeah. And for a man, telling him which way to go, it's like cutting off his...
You mentioned that there were a couple of derailers of communication, right?
Yeah.
So one is emotion.
Yeah.
And what do you think is the second one?
Okay, now the second one, it's not as sexy as emotion, but I tell you, in where I work in corporate, it is the number one derailer of communication today, and that's time pressures. Time pressures. So people are so busy, so pressured to
Oh my God, yes.
achieve, to get results, that they tend to dive into communication as though they're diving into ChatGPT, forgetting that human beings are very slow processors. For us to understand, to absorb, to accept, you have to take that person on a slow journey on the pace of a human. Humans, we don't realize just how slow humans are to process. So when people are in a rush, they tend to start with the aim. They start with where they want to go too fast. And the other party doesn't get taken through the steps they need. Another experiment? Would you care for another experiment?
Please do. Please do.
This is an experiment I've done 1,000,000 times. I'm going to do it with you, and we'll see if the result. It's the same as with most people, okay? Now, imagine this. I'm going to come to you and deliver a message to you in two different ways. And I'm going to ask you, which of the two ways would you be more likely to respond favorably to? In other words, to say yes, okay? First one, I come to you and I say, Cindy, could you do me a big favor this afternoon? Could you spend 20 minutes with me and help me to understand WebEx? I've got this client coming in and he doesn't know how to use it. You're the only person that knows how to use it. And look, I know how busy you are, but could you give me 20 minutes? Okay, there's the first one. The second way would be like this. Cindy, I know how busy you are right now. I really do. But I've got this client coming in and I have to present him on WebEx, and you're the only person I know who knows how to use it. Would you spend 20 minutes this afternoon and help me? So exactly the same message, just different word order. Which one would you be more likely to...
Well, if you were the one to ask me, I'll accept both.
No, forget me. Thank you.
But if I think about it objectively,
Generally.
the second one, I think there's a lot more empathy in acknowledging the fact that, hey, I know you're busy and I see you and I feel you, but this is a time where I really need your help. I'm just requesting 20 minutes. I would prefer the second one.
Right, exactly. And that's what 90%, maybe you said the same thing, 90% of people say that. Now, if you look at the construct of those, they're exactly the same wording. The difference is, one, I asked for the favor, I explained why, and then I acknowledged your time. The other, I acknowledged your time, I explained, and I asked for the favor. Now, look at the journey I'm taking you on. If someone comes up to you and says, Cindy, can you do me a favor? Now, instantly, before your conscious mind has even had time to digest it, you're already thinking, oh my God, what does she want? How am I going to get out of this? I'm busy. I don't have time. How much is she going to demand of me? You know, and then by the time I'm explaining the situation, you're already thinking, you're listening through a lens of, I don't know what she's going to want. I got to get out of this, right? But when somebody starts by acknowledging your time, you right away feel comfortable, like you said, right?
It's almost like you've kind of released that armor that you're holding between you and that person, right? Because everyone's kind of busy and like, what do you want from me? What kind of demands do you want to make from me? But the moment you apply the empathy and you acknowledge that person for what they are going through at this point of time, they let down their guardrails.
Exactly. And then they'll really listen to your situation because they're open. So humans need to be taken on that right journey where we're fragile. And we need gentle pacing. You know, we're so used to today communicating on AI and you know, using AI. We forget how slow and how different humans are. I'll tell you an interesting statistic I just read. In the time that it takes light to travel around the world 7 million times. In that time, that's how long you need to look at a picture and understand what the picture is that you're looking at, make sense of that picture. That's how slow we are. The time it takes us to look at a picture and say, I'm looking at a picture of a dog. Light can travel around the world 7 million times. Another statistic, your laptop, in the time that it takes your laptop to read and respond to 5,000 average length emails, your brain can only read and understand one sentence. Okay? So
maybe we are not dyslexic after all. Maybe everyone's dyslexic.
Well, we're human. Yeah. I mean, we don't realize we need kid gloves with communication. So time pressure. I mean, do you see that at all? All
the time, you know, whenever I do my trainings and engagements, and I'm guilty of that as well, right? We're kind of living in like this instant world. Everything is instantly ready. We've become addicts of being a rusher, this panic rush for time. And I thought about this fact about, you know, how even participants in our trainings, I realized that they're very quick to go to their phones whenever they sense that we're not giving them immediate value. They immediately take out their phones. And if I even think about how quick I scroll through my phones, everything is just happening in the speed of a moment.
Yeah.
So even though we're having this instant answers and instant messaging, but a lot of people don't realize that trust really cannot be built in an instant.
Yeah, another place that I see people really struggling with time pressure is in presenting to leaders. So people are given these very short windows of opportunity, and those windows of presentation opportunity seem to get shorter and shorter. And yet the amount of information and data people are trying to distill is getting bigger and bigger. So people I'm seeing this a lot, people are trying to shove so much information into a very small piece of time, and it becomes sort of this information dump that makes it very hard for leaders to hear the story, to catch the main points. So that's one of the primary roles that I play, is helping people with that. It's very challenging, you know?
It is. And, you know, this reminded me of a time last year when I had a client that wanted a bit of coaching from me as well. And she said that, hey, I'm going to be a speaker at a fintech convention or something like that. And she gave me a whole deck, and it was just data after data after data. And I told her, no, we need to cut at least 70% of this. And she actually did cut 70% of that. But when we had our other coaching session, she said, I'm sorry, we have to use this because my boss wants me to follow his style of presenting it. So I can imagine how it could kind of have been passed on from leaders to leaders, and we're just doing the same thing and not realizing that, hey, something's got to change because people are not accepting all these numbers and data so much and understanding it, right?
Exactly. I think you hit it on the nose, and we see that same pattern in emails. People learn from their bosses how to write an email in that old, wordy, sort of older British English formal style of writing emails. And yet that kind of language was from a time when people were not receiving 200 emails a day that they had to read through. So their bosses are still saying this is the right way to write. You need this kind of fancy language. People just don't have time for that. Sentences like, my good friend Shirley Taylor, who I work with closely, and one of the worst phrases has got to be like, should you require further clarifications, do not hesitate to contact me. Right? I mean, it's the wordiest, most bombastic way of saying, if you need any help, please call me. So, yeah.
I love that. That's hilarious. I think I've read that somewhere before. Another of my favorites, which I hate, is as per my last email. Right. I just thought that sounded really weird. And who talks like that? As per my last email, we will never say that in front of each other, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So let's go on to the solution, right? So we've talked about the derailers.
As per the solution.
As per the solution. So how can leaders and executives, people at the workplace, what kind of tips and tricks can we share with them so that they can be better communicators?
Okay, well, there's a few principles that I think are the most prevalent needs in communication. I mean, just general principles that people can add to their communication toolbox. And the first one is, shall we do another experiment, Cindy?
Yes, please.
She's very good with experiments. Okay, all right. Rather than tell you what it is, I'll give Cindy a scenario and we'll see her do it brilliantly. Let's imagine you are a doctor and you've done tests on me. Very sadly, please forgive me if anybody is not comfortable with this, trigger warning. You look at the test and you see that I've got cancer. Okay? Now, I'm coming back in a week later for my follow-up appointment where you have to give me this news. You've got the test results back and now you have to tell me. So I sit down at the desk, I say, okay, doctor, how do you say it? What do you do?
Wow.
Think of every doctor show you've ever seen. Go back to Grey's Anatomy.
That was one of my favorite shows, by the way.
Well,
how would I tell you that?
I knew she would be an expert. Yeah.
How would I tell you that you have cancer? Wow, that's so difficult. I think back about the time my doctor told me that there was something wrong with me. I probably would, number one, try and match the energy and slow the person down, depending on where they are in their state of mind and emotion. So a little bit of intuition and sensing would be really useful. I would probably start by saying, there's something I need to tell you. And just to let them know beforehand that, hey, this is not going to be the best of news. And then I will verbally say, I don't have the greatest news, but I think it's important that we be honest and direct about this. And then I'll go straight into it.
You see, I knew she would do it brilliantly.
Oh, thank you.
Well, okay, so what you did was what I call setting the table. You set the table for the main body of what you want to talk about. You didn't dive into it. You set the table so that the meal would be more digestible, right? Now, I worked with doctors in a particular country who had, before they gave bad news like that, they had 3 things they would do. The first was exactly what you said. They would say, we got the test results back and it's not exactly the results we'd hoped for. Just like you, it's kind of softening the blow, right? As you did so beautifully. The second thing they would do is say, look, before I share it with you, I want to let you know that you are in the best hospital in this city. We've got the best team in this area, and you're in really good hands. So they would give them some assurance. The third thing they would do is say, would you like to call your husband or your wife? I can tell you together, or would you like me to proceed and tell you now? So by asking permission, the moment the patient says, please go ahead, the moment the person consents to the information, they are much more leaning into receiving the bad news. They're much less likely going to be in shock because they're now playing an active role in the conversation. So all of that is a way of just creating the context that you need for the conversation to take place, right? Setting the table is one of the most important qualities in communication, whether it's presentation, whether it's conversation or an email writing. And it's one of the ones that are missing the most in this rush for time. Remember we said like this panic, this time pressure is what derails communication. And the first thing to go with time pressure is the non-essentials, like setting of the table. And yet the setting of the table is vital. It's absolutely vital. I'll give you an interesting example. I worked with a bank that had to, one of their roles was they had to call customers at home. You know, now with all of the money laundering, they have to be, obviously we all know, very, very careful with information. They would have to personally call customers and ask them questions, very personal questions, right? And this was to validate their information. And people would feel like this was an interrogation. They'd be at home having their dinner and they'd say like, you know, I feel like I'm being interrogated. So I said to these bankers who I was working with, I said, okay, why don't you set the table that way? Start by telling them your intention, why you're asking this, and then tell them what to expect. Tell them the truth. Say, this is probably going to sound like an interrogation. And I don't mean it to be. Now, simply by saying that up front, by setting that up front, people didn't feel it was an interrogation because the banker had already, in a humorous way, said it's going to sound like that. You know, once you say the truth up front, you lay things out, you set that table, people are much more likely to lean into communication. So setting the table is crucial. And I'm wondering if you can relate to that in your life, like areas where you see people forget to do that.
You know, I love what you're saying because I think there's so many nuances in the sequence, right? Of if we were to start with this or start with that. And it sounds like very often we want to get our messages across, but the other person is just not ready to receive it. Yeah, so I love that example. If I can think of one of my own, I think it's really feedback. I remember there was one time, it was also a time when I did an online training. It was during COVID. And I developed a training program which I had to facilitate online. And during the break, and I was so stressed out because, you know, technically I wasn't very, very good in, you know, navigating Zoom and all that. And I remember it was a 4-hour session, and in between, we had a 20 minutes break. And one of my colleagues actually called me up during that break, within that 20-minute segment, and immediately gave me feedback. And I remember at that time, I was feeling like, I'm so not ready for this. I'm so stressed up right now. The last thing I want is somebody to be telling me that I'm not doing great. I wish you would just let me be and just let me just F it up and tell it to me later. But I remember that at that time when she gave me that feedback, I was doubly stressed up. So bad time to have given that to me, I felt.
I can completely imagine. And how much could she have turned it around if she'd said, hey, you're doing great. I've got a suggestion for you that's going to bring it, the second part, even to the next level.
Totally.
You know, she could have changed, reframed it so that you would lean in and embrace it rather than...
Yeah, because it was just like, hey, you know, it was this. She was just telling me the bad things and there was no solution. So you just feel like you're being stripped naked.
What?
And nobody's going to dress you anymore. Yeah, so I didn't like that at all. Yeah. So, you know, I'm excited to hear about your other tips. And do you have an experiment to share with us?
I always have experiments. Okay. So, setting the table is the first thing that's really, really useful and important to remember with every conversation, not just bad news, by the way, with anything. The second one is more of a mindset. And I'm going to do this with you. And we'll do, I actually have a little prompt. Where's my prompt? Oh,
do you want
Juana, would you please bring us the prompt? Thank you so much, Juana.
What do we have here?
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Juana. Right. So, Cindy, let's imagine this is you and this is your information that you want to share. Can I ask you to hold on to that jug of water? Now,
hold
this
it?
is yes, hold it up. This is a message that you want to give. And this is the person that you want to give it to you to.
Right.
Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is hold it up a little bit high and get your message.
I so don't have the
person.
strength for this. Okay. Am I supposed to pour it in?
Yeah, get your message into the other person. Oh, no, wait. Let's make it a little more challenging. Just keep it a little bit higher.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, let me just try and lift it up.
Wait. I want a separate. You can hold the bottle down a little bit.
What, like that?
Yeah. How about I hold it for you?
Yeah.
I'll hold it
It's a
down.
little bit wonky below.
Can you pour it?
I can.
Oh, okay. Ready? Okay, stop. Thank you very much. And you got it all in. That's great.
Some
Okay.
came out.
Well,
Sorry about that.
very
We'll wipe
little-
that up for you.
Sorry, guys.
We'll wipe that up for you.
We'll lick it up later. Because I happen to have a tongue.
I don't know why she brings jugs and tongues around with her everywhere, but the communication experts, right?
Okay, now, Cindy, when you poured that water in, just do it. You don't have to pour it this time. Just remember, where was your focus as you did it? Where was your...
The whole.
The focus was on the hole, my friends, on the hole.
I never thought that I'll say that, but yes, the focus was on the whole.
The focus was on the hole, okay?
Yeah.
The focus was not here. The focus was certainly not here. The focus was right here. Now, as a metaphor, this is what in communication? This is where it goes into the other person, right?
The receiver.
The receiver. Your entire focus had to be on the place where your message goes into them. Had to be there. Now, what most people do when they get nervous is, where do they focus? Do they focus here or do they focus here?
There.
When they get nervous.
They focus here
They
when they
focus
get nervous.
entirely on themselves.
Because the first thing I was like, I can't handle this. It's too much for me.
Right.
Right? So I was focusing on how I can't handle this and how uncomfortable it is, and I have to get it out.
Right. And yet, you knew you couldn't just pour it all out. Now, what most people do, especially when they're nervous, is all of their focus is on their message. We see that especially with non-native speakers often when they're concerned about their language or people speaking upwards. How am I coming across? How's my language? Am I saying it right? Is my information right? Do I have all the answers? Do I have enough information? They're so focused on their output rather than the whole where the message is going in. So what would happen if you focused on here? Try and pour that water.
If I focus on here.
Yes. Focus on yourself as you're pouring in.
Okay.
Okay, we won't do it.
Yeah, we won't do it. It's going to spill again.
What would happen? It would spill all over
All
the floor,
over.
Right?
For sure.
So this is just a metaphor, but the key is that really 99.9% of our focus when we're communicating should be on this place where the information is going in, on the person that we're communicating to, and noticing the speed with which we can get that information into it. Only by looking here do we know, do I need to slow down? Do I need to speed up? Are they getting it? Is it too much for them? Is it going in? And yet that's not what we do, right? We focus on ourselves when we're nervous, and that's my second principle.
Beautifully put. And thank you for bringing some props here to do an experiment. Nothing like a visual experiment that we can all see with our own eyes.
That's right, and thank you for being the guinea pig.
Thank you
Should we
so
give
much.
this back to Juana? Juana,
Yeah.
thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Juana. When you got me thinking about nerves and emotions and how we tend to focus on ourselves, right? I really just want to kind of transit us to another part, because I do want to talk about people that are non-native speakers and how they struggle with weaker English. So in my line of work, I do a lot of trainings and sometimes even coaching for people in the luxury brand arena.
Right.
And we train a lot of the very senior client advisors who have to serve the very high net worth clients.
Right.
And very often these very senior client advisors, they are very sophisticated themselves, they're highly qualified. The only thing they struggle with is, again, a little bit weaker in the grammar. So they could be very confident in their product knowledge, the way they carry themselves, but the moment they have to serve a Caucasian client, they start to stumble. So I've heard a lot from them. Some of them shared with me, please don't ask me to speak English. I can speak it, but the moment I have to speak in complete sentences, it just really scares me. So what is your experience with that, and what tip would you give with people who struggle with, a slightly weaker level of English?
Okay. I was married to a Chinese for 15 years who was a non-native speaker and didn't speak English very well when I first met him. I've lived with this for many, many years. My daughter's Chinese educated. I've had Arabic students in my house for 20 years living there. I know this so well. My TED Talk, the one that you introduced me. I mean, this is what it's about. So this is an area that I'm very familiar with. And, when I first came to this part of the world, people were constantly asking me to help non-native speakers with grammar. Their grammar's no good. My staff's grammar isn't very good. They need better grammar. And I used to think that was really important. I can remember once I was in a taxi in Malaysia, driving in this taxi, and the taxi driver says to me, "Okay, miss, you get down here." And I said to him, no. It's not get down here. You get out here. he said, "It's my taxi. You get out here." But I realized it really is not the issue. Look, I say this all the time, that communication is a tool to use. It's not an art to master. Non-native speakers still come from an education background, institutions that make them feel that they're learning the art of the language. In today's global world, it's a tool. Let me give you a wonderful example, okay? A beautiful example of how very low-level English can be a beautiful tool. I had a student from Saudi Arabia living with me, Marwan. And Marwan wanted to send money to his brother in Indonesia. So I took him to one of those money senders. And we get to the money sender. Marwan's English is quite poor, and he's really nervous. He can't do it himself. He's filled in the form, the form with all the banking information to send his money to the brother, puts it on the counter, and the woman behind the counter, who's Chinese, says, "May I know, what is your relationship to the person on the form?" And Marwan just looks. He doesn't understand a thing she says. She looks at him. She realizes his English level is very low. And she says 3 simple words, 3 beautifully structured, organized message. She says, "Okay, this, you're who?" And Marwan says, "My brother."
I would totally understand what she said.
Well, think about it. It's the most beautiful structure. This. So she right away focuses him on the thing he's talking about. She connects it to him. Who? He gets instantly. I mean, this is beautiful. This is beautiful global communication. So I would say for non-native speakers, I've been doing this for 30 years in Asia. The level of this is not our language. It's not native speakers' language anymore. If you looked at all of the English conversations spoken on planet Earth today, less than 1% is going to be native speakers talking to native speakers. It's a very small percent. Almost every single conversation today is non-native speakers. It's not meant to be spoken grammatically correctly. It's not necessary. But what that pressure does is it makes those people, like your clients, try to impress rather than express a message. Rather than get a message across, they're focused on impressing with their command of the language. And it's the worst thing. First of all, nobody today wants fancy. People want clear, straight to the point, kind. That's basically all we need today.
And simple.
Clear and kind. If you got that, you've nailed.
That sounds like a
you've
brand.
nailed life.
I love that. So it's really not the amount of words, how polished the words is, but is it clear? Is it simple? And you don't need a lot to be able to get a message through, right?
Simple example in Singapore during COVID. I lived in Malaysia at that time, okay? In Malaysia, the way they communicated the need to stay at home was very wordy. There was all kinds of, lots of words and regulations and a lot of explanation and rationale and facts and data. Went in and out. In Singapore, they had one word that everybody got that was so visual and so beautiful and so clearly let us all feel you stay at home because we need to. Do you remember what that word was?
Was it isolation?
No, it was a word that captured what Singapore was trying to create.
Lockdown or something like that?
Circuit
breaker.
Yeah, do you remember that?
Yes.
I mean, that captured it beautifully. And everybody used that phrase, right? Everybody in Singapore talked about circuit breaker. Everybody understood it. Everybody could picture it.
Yes.
It was simplicity at its finest. And it was so much, that one word had so much more gravitas than all of the facts and explanations.
This is interesting. It got me thinking about how COVID, a lot of us, we were given a lot of rules and tips to say, hey, how do you sort of, have a little social distancing, right? Yeah, social distancing, but it's actually physical distancing, rather than social distancing. So this got me thinking about social conversations a little bit because, the holidays are coming. We're going to experience Christmas and New Year. I want to just kind of transition a little bit to this little idea of small talk. Yeah, because I realized that when people's emotions are high or when they get intimidated by someone, they tend to struggle with small talk and they forget to connect. Well, I have learned throughout the years, because when I was younger, I always thought that I was a conversational connoisseur. But I think over the years, I realized that I'm only good with conversations when I'm with people that I like and I know. But when it's strangers, especially somebody that I deem to be more powerful than me, it scares me, especially during my younger years. So one tip I usually share with people is that, I really like what you said earlier about not focusing on yourself, focusing on the other people. And what I've learned is that in human connection and human conversations, there are 4 human social gifts that we can give to people. So the 4 social gifts are, I use it I like to string things together because it helps me to remember. So I'm going to use this acronym called ACES, ACES. So A stands for appreciation. This is helping people to be seen and to be felt. So it could be as simple as during a conversation, you just acknowledge that person and just say, hey, I realize that you're not feeling well and you're here today. So I really see the energy and the resilience in you. As simple as that, because not many people get appreciated in their families and even in their line of work, right?
That's so true.
Yeah. C actually stands for connection. So what connection actually meant is that can you find a common shared interest between you and the other person? So for example, you came from Melbourne, I really enjoyed the coffee culture there. You watched that Netflix movie. I really enjoyed that as well. So find an area that you can connect with the other person. The next one would be E. E would be for encouragement. It's not very common in the Asian culture, right? We talk and we are just very objective, not much emotions there. And encouragement really elevates the other party. So if we realize that, this person haven't had a really good year, it could be as simple as, I trust that next year is going to be a much better one for you. I'm going to manifest this with you. I'm going to stand in faith with you. And, I know that this was a very, very difficult project for you, but I know that you have learned and you've grown a lot. Yeah, so that's the E. And then S would actually stand for spark. So what spark brings is actually value and growth. So ask yourself, is there something new or is there something that you are very good at that you can add on to the conversation? It could be as simple as, now a lot of people are starting to do videos, right, on LinkedIn. It could be as simple as, have you heard of this app called Submagic? It's a fantastic app for video editors and content creators because it helps you with hooks. It helps you to clear off the silent pauses. So the ACES, it's a gift that we can give to people. So maybe one question that you could think about and the viewers could also think about is, out of these 4 gifts, which one do you think you're good at? And which one do you think could be one that you could sort of elevate up a little bit?
Well, for me, I like the encouragement one because that's the least common one. I mean, I think appreciation, I would say I probably do fairly naturally. Connection do fairly naturally. The S probably, but encouragement, I probably don't do that enough. So thank you. I think Own Your BS is going to be a huge, huge hit. You go, sister. It's going to be great.
Thank you.
And you're the perfect person for it.
I really appreciate that. And I think this is the place. And this is the place that, I kind of really wanted for the speakers here and the hosts here to be able to share their struggles. And I think it's a place for us to really own up because we want to connect with our viewers and our audience, and we just want to share with them that, hey, none of us were perfect before, none of us have it all together. And when we are able to share our struggles, it really just opens up the space for others to do the same.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you.
And you know what? That's nice about what you said about encouragement, because as soon as I encouraged you, it got you contributing to the conversation also, because when you encourage someone, it's something they care about, and that helps bring you into the conversation and want to talk about it more because it's a point of interest.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So it really elevates connection, isn't
Yeah,
it? If
it
you
does.
think
It's
about
a
it.
great idea.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
You know, I really, really enjoyed our conversation today, Marianna. I think now would be a good time for us to ask each other some quick fire questions. I think this will not take more than about 2 to 3 minutes maximum.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm
So
very
let's
scared.
just try and make it fun, okay?
I'm scared.
So we'll take turns to throw at each other.
Oh my God, I'm scared. Okay, all right. Pressure. Okay, ready? Mm-hmm. Who's the one person you can't live without?
Now? Oh, well, my husband, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, my closest family member.
Good answer.
It has to be that. Okay, I'm going to ask you, would you rather give an unprepared speech or do karaoke in front of your clients?
Unprepared speech, no question.
Communication expert, okay.
What's your signature dance move?
Wow, the running man?
The what?
The running man, oh my God. I can't believe I said that. The last time I did the running man.
Is that a dance move?
It is. Okay,
would you be able to show us the running man?
Not at this point because I've got heels and titanium hips. But go back and this will tell you how old we are. Go and Google this song called Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice, and you'll see them doing that throughout the entire video.
Ice Baby, the running man.
Okay, so that's my dance move. Okay, so this is about communication. How do you handle someone who talks non-stop? What is your best tip for that?
Let them exhaust themselves.
Wow, what if they don't get exhausted? Some people just don't have a stop to their mouths.
Listen and see what you can get out of it. Yeah, I don't think
Focus on the whole.
The whole, my friend, the whole. What's your favorite? What emoji would you be if you were an emoji?
I'll be the one with the mouth slightly down because I'm skeptical most of the time. Like,
one with the
whatever.
Okay.
I'm a little bit more of that. Yeah. Okay. Would you rather do public speaking with toilet paper stuck to your shoe or have your fly down?
Weird question. I think I've done both.
Oh, really?
Yeah. How about toilet paper sticking out of my fly? I think
That is not a good scene.
I'll take the toilet paper.
Very cool.
Toilet paper, please. If you could switch lives with someone for a day, who would you switch with?
Switch lives with someone for a day. There's one person that I really admire. Her name is Mel Robbins.
I love
She's a
Mel
speaker, and
Robbins.
you know what? Actually, you remind me very much of her.
Really? I love her.
Yeah, she's just got this spunk, this authenticity, and she's got ADHD. She talks about it, and I just like everything about her. So
Me too.
She's somebody I aspire to be as a speaker.
She's crazy good.
Crazy good.
So
yeah.
authentic. Guilty pleasure song.
Gosh, I'm going to so ruin my reputation if I were to say this. Spice
Running Man.
Girls.
What?
Spice Girls. A guilty pleasure song. Okay, song. Yeah, still Spice Girls. It's the one that goes, tell me what you want, what you really want.
I love that song.
Those days when we had those high, like 4-inch platform shoes.
It's a great song.
Okay, so most dramatic thing you've ever done to escape a boring conversation.
I've probably lied and given some story like, probably just lied and said, oh, look, I think basically that's what I've done. I haven't shot anybody mid-conversation. Probably just told a lie to get out of there.
Nice.
Absolute first thing you do when you wake up in the morning.
Pray. That's actually the first thing I do because,
Nice.
very often I'm very tempted to look at my mobile phones, but I'm like, no, I can't do this. And the first thing I'll do is, 'cause I'm a Christian, so to me, I feel like the first thing that's important for me is just connect with God.
Oh,
so that's what
nice.
I do. Yeah.
That's why I love her.
Okay, one last one that I have for you. Funniest thing you've ever said when your brain was faster than your mouth.
Oh my God, probably so many. Oh, I know. I worked for a man who was a very, very overweight man once. And he said to me, oh, how is so-and-so doing? Talking about someone I'm doing. That we both knew. And I said, oh, he's gained a lot of weight. He's bigger than you. What? And then I thought, what a stupid thing to say. I don't know why I said that.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
What is the most embarrassing thing that you Google when no one's looking?
I can't think
Like
of
your
one.
time waster.
Time
Like
waster.
pimple poppers or something like that.
Oh, thank you for reminding me of that. That's actually my favorite thing to do. I had an addiction to it once. I was watching it on Facebook and it just kept showing up on my feed. And I would spend literally like 15 minutes watching each video. And I find it very therapeutic actually.
Another show.
We're learning about each other. So thank you so much, Marianna, for being with us today on the Own Your BS show. So where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn at Marianna Pascal. Yes, I think that's the best place. My website is being revamped and will be revamped in about 3 days, I think, or a week.
I look forward to seeing that new website of yours.
Cindy, it's always a pleasure. I love you from the bottom of my heart, and I hope that we remain friends for life.
We will, for sure. And this is not going to be the last of it. I'm sure we'll have a lot more of such sessions.
Thank you. I wish you all the best with it.
Very much. Love you.
Love you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. And to our viewers, I hope you've enjoyed the conversation today with Marianna Pascal and myself. I think we've unpacked about conversations, what are the derailers. We've talked about confidence, how to show up and be heard, even when our English isn't perfect. And we've also discussed a little bit about small talk and how do you connect with people during conversations, especially during the holidays. So, question to you, what's one takeaway that you've gotten from today? And also, what's one thing that you'd like to change in terms of your communication as you listen to this episode? So, thank you again for being with us. And this is your Own Your BS show. My name is Cindy Tian, and I'll see you in the next episode. Yay! Thank you! We did it!
How was that for you, Cindy?
It was scary but fun. Interesting. And
Cut that. We'll lick it up later. Because I happen to have a tongue.